The mid-1960s, United States. Activist lawyer Ralph Weber published a book with a shocking title, Dangerous at Any Speed. It described unsafe design practices in some American cars, with the most criticism directed at the major automotive corporation, General Motors and its Chevrolet Corvair. The investigation conducted by the author indicated that this car had serious design flaws, due to which there were numerous accidents, some of which were fatal. The book generated a huge public outcry and became a bestseller. The automaker's reputation was seriously damaged, and the car earned a reputation as a killer of its owners. And what served as the catalyst for the scandal? This is the deadly story of the Chevrolet Corvair. In the late 1950s, the rapid rise in sales of cars such as the Volkswagen Beetle, the Fiat 500, and the Renault Dauphine forced the management of automotive giant General Motors to consider whether it might be a good idea to build an inexpensive, mass-market car in America as well, since their competitors at Volkswagen were selling their Beetles in huge numbers and increasing sales year after year. But here's the problem. Not all Americans are fond of compact, low-powered cars. They wanted a big car, a family sedan. It had to seat at least 5 people and have a decent, powerful engine. Gas was practically free back then, and the design had to be something they wouldn't be embarrassed to show off to the neighbors. So, by 1959, after a couple of years of development, a car that was, one might say, revolutionary for America rolled out of General Motors engineering shops, the Chevrolet Corvair. It was an affordable car that possessed features quite rare for America. In terms of its dimensions, this beauty differed greatly from its European counterparts. The Volkswagen Beetle, Renault Dauphine, and Fiat 500 were all very compact cars. But compared to them, the Corvair was simply a giant. Over 4.5 meters long and 1,770 millimeters wide, it was, by comparison, not much smaller than the German S-Class, which was considered a large and prestigious car. If we list the engines that were installed in this affordable car, its European counterparts pale in comparison. After all, engine power ranged from 80 horsepower in the base model to a turbocharged 180 horsepower with a choice of manual or automatic transmission. Typical American car, some might say, but it's not that simple. The Corvair followed the European trend toward a rear-engine layout. It was the first American passenger car in history to feature a rear-mounted engine. But that wasn't the only unusual aspect. The engine was an air-cooled 6-cylinder boxer engine, which was also atypical of American automotive engineering. Furthermore, most American cars of that era featured a rear-wheel drive layout with a ladder frame chassis, but the Corvair boasted fully independent suspension on all 4 wheels and a monocoque body with a completely flat floor in the cabin and no drive shaft. Corvair resembled an American car only in terms of size. Otherwise, it was a vehicle unique to the United States, with its own distinctive features and character. And the price was less than $2,000. That was just 6 times the average salary of a U.S. resident at the time. Such a low price tag naturally boosted sales. More than 200,000 cars were sold in the very first year. Even the prestigious Motor Trend magazine named the Corvair Car of the Year. It's no surprise that following the sedan body style, the model lineup began to expand on this rear-engine platform. A coupe, a convertible, a station wagon, and even a family of commercial vehicles with a van layout hit the market. The cars were being built. They sold well. Everything was wonderful. But then came one of the most unpleasant days for General Motors. a book that forever changed the public's perception of the Chevrolet Corvair, is now being released nationwide. The book Dangerous at Any Speed caused a sensation. The author, Ralph Nader, conducted a wide-ranging investigation prompted by a large number of complaints and lawsuits against General Motors. The investigation revealed that the Chevrolet Corvair was involved in accidents more frequently than other models and appeared frequently in traffic reports. Investigations revealed that the car was prone to sudden loss of control and even rollovers when cornering. There were many factors behind this. First, American drivers were simply unfamiliar with the characteristics of a rear-engine layout, where 60% of the weight is on the rear axle. They had simply never had such cars before. Rear-engine cars have always been prone to oversteer, and when skidding, required very quick and precise responses from the driver. But for Americans who had driven front-engine cars their entire lives, such abrupt handling came as a surprise. Another important factor was that with this weight distribution, the rear tires needed to be inflated to a higher pressure than the front ones. This requirement was often simply ignored. Second, since the Corvair was a fairly affordable car, it was within reach of housewives, students, or simply drivers who were just starting out. As a result, a car that wasn't exactly easy to handle ended up in the hands of inexperienced drivers, which naturally also contributed to the number of road casualties. Drivers simply didn't know what to do in such situations. The weight distribution played a cruel trick on them. The biggest issue is a design flaw. The book highlighted the car's glaring shortcomings, specifically the rear independent suspension, which had been designed to be as inexpensive as possible and featured suboptimal suspension kinematics. The swing axle suspension system, with its swinging half shafts, is unable to keep the car on track effectively. When this suspension is in operation, the camber angle of the wheels constantly changes. During compression, the camber is negative, and during extension, it is positive. As a result, the contact patch between the tires and the road constantly changes, which led to unstable traction. This, in turn, affected directional stability and risked causing the vehicle to suddenly break into a skid. When cornering, this issue was exacerbated by the fact that, in fast turns, the suspension system with swinging half shafts caused the wheel to tilt so much that it sometimes led to the tire buckling, which threatened to cause the car to roll over almost inevitably. Add to that a soft suspension with long travel, and very importantly, the car lacked a rear anti-roll bar. $15. That's exactly how much the stabilizer cost back then. But the company decided to cut corners on it to keep the car's price down. I think if they had known how this would all turn out, they would have installed the stabilizer even if it cost $30. Stiffer springs and stabilizers were offered only as options. Only a few people knew about this upgrade package, and it wasn't even mentioned in the advertising brochure. Many European cars of that era had the same suspension, but they were fairly underpowered. In contrast, the Chevrolet Corvair was much larger, had incomparably more power, and was capable of reaching much higher speeds. Well, of course, why on earth would we drive small cars, thought the Americans, who loved to cruise with the wind in their hair. The book Dangerous at Any Speed created an incredibly negative atmosphere. The car's reputation was ruined. Lawsuits from car owners poured in by the thousands. The scandal gained even more notoriety when a popular American comedian was killed in a crash while driving a Corvair. General Motors couldn't keep up with the barrage of criticism and accusations. The company was ordered to pay compensation to all those affected and to urgently fix all the car's defects. That same year, the rear suspension was completely redesigned. The kinematics of the suspension arms were corrected, and the Corvair began to be equipped with a more expensive and sophisticated system from the Chevrolet Corvette sports car. It seemed that General Motors would have been better off forgetting this whole episode as quickly as possible. but they wanted revenge and were willing to go to great lengths to get it. In an effort to discredit Nader, General Motors executives hired private investigators to dig into his past. They tapped his phone and commissioned smear pieces in the media to make him look bad. They even sent him women of loose morals, but none of it worked. Ralph Nader saw right through them and sued them for invasion of privacy. The court ruled in his favor, and General Motors' already difficult situation got even worse. The company's executives publicly apologized to him and paid him nearly $500,000 in compensation for emotional distress. This scandal made headlines in newspapers and on television for years, and people simply couldn't seem to forget it. Even after the suspension was completely overhauled and drivers were briefed on the specific handling characteristics of rear-engine cars on the road, Corvair sales plummeted. Whereas 250,000 cars had been sold annually, just over 27,000 were sold in the wake of the scandal. The car's reputation was irrevocably ruined. There was only one solution. After 10 years on the assembly line, the Chevrolet Corvair was discontinued for good. 2 years later, after the Corvair had already been discontinued, the National Transportation Safety Board conducted tests on several vehicles. Among them were the Ford Falcon, the Plymouth Valiant, the rear-engine Volkswagen Beetle, the Renault Dauphine, and 2 Corvairs, a model with the dangerous suspension and a modified 1967 version with the suspension redesigned. And here are the conclusions. The 1963 Corvair holds up well in comparison with similar cars used in the tests. Handling and stability do not result in unexpected loss of control or rollovers, and are at least as good as those of the other vehicles used in the tests, both domestic and foreign. This completely contradicts Nader's investigation. Some claimed that the Corvair was dangerous, while others argued that the car was the victim of a conspiracy. Different sources interpret the behavior of the rear-engine Chevrolet differently. Some argue that the car proved to be quite safe in tests compared to cars with the same layout, while others claim that engineers were aware of the car's tendency to skid. But company management, in an effort to cut costs, turned a blind eye to the problem. A former top executive at General Motors claimed that the criticism directed at the Corvair was justified. And if you ask engineers about this type of suspension, they will tell you that the kinematics of this design, combined with a rear-heavy vehicle, do not perform well at all. Since then, this design has never been used in the automotive industry again. In the wake of this massive scandal, very strict safety standards were introduced in the United States. Features such as dual-circuit braking systems, seatbelts, soft interior trim, telescopic steering columns, and headrests became mandatory in vehicles. Today, there are certain features that are essential for a car, but back then, more than 50 years ago, things were very different. The safety of American cars has been taken to a whole new level. Whatever the course of history may have been, the Chevrolet Corvair served as the catalyst that shifted the focus in automobiles away from design, comfort, and performance, and toward the lives of those inside. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the most important thing. No company's profits should ever take precedence over the safety of its customers. And this is just one such story. If you're interested in cars that have changed the industry, subscribe. It's going to get even more interesting from here on out.